Let's turn to our practice today. Of course, here we're at a juncture in the Jewish year, the beginning of a new year. It happens to be a Shemitah year, a sabbatical year, a year of release, of letting go. And we're in these Aseret Yemei Tshuva, the 10 days of awe between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And many of these themes come together in some of the liturgy, traditional liturgy, as well as in the literature of 12-step recovery. So I'd like to share, I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to thank Adi Stein, who's holding our space here, for sharing the link for those who would like to either follow along on your own or just want to download the text later. Entitling this practice, Shemitah practice, turning our lives over to God, which is a theme of these Yamim Noraim, the days of awe, and of course, really a primary theme of recovery, of living in recovery. Step 3 of the 12 steps says, we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood God. Of course, it's essential to remember that in 12-step recovery, the word God is left to be interpreted to the individual, however one understands God or the divine or the sacred is fine. It's up to you to determine that. But the key here is step 3, which is a deeply challenging spiritual practice, is the concept of turning our life and our will over to the care of something greater than ourselves, not being in control, which for many of us can be a very terrifying prospect. The prayer that accompanies that third step, at least as it was originally composed in the big book of AA on page 863, is as follows. God, I offer myself to you to build me and to do with me as you will. Relieve me of the bondage of self that I may better do your will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help with your power, your love, and your way of life. May I do your will always. So this is the essence of, this is the principle of 12-step recovery I wanted to bring in here, this idea of consciously making a decision to surrender one's will, one's control, and one's very life over to something greater than ourselves. In the Jewish liturgy, the prayer Aleinu, which probably is familiar to probably most, if not all of you, which is a prayer that traditionally ends each service, Aleinu, which literally means it's on us, it's upon us, it's up to us, originated as a prayer recited during the days of awe, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. You probably know, or you may know, that during Aleinu, when we reach a passage in Aleinu, it is traditional to bend the knee and bow. And on Rosh Hashanah and on Yom Kippur, the only times of the year when it is traditional actually to not only bow, but to actually completely prostrate oneself completely on the ground during Aleinu at this passage, where it says, V'anachnu korim u'mishtachavim u'modim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu. We bend the knee, prostrate, and acknowledge before the ruler of rulers, the Holy One of blessing. It's a passage which I think shares a lot in terms of its impact and its message with the third step, the idea of turning one's life over. And it's an embodied practice for that step itself. I wanted just to really quickly unpack look at what the rabbis in the Talmud had to say about this passage. Tanu Rabbanan, in one passage in Shvuot in the Talmud, the sages taught Kriya, that's the Korim in the blue, bend the knee, means descending upon one's knees. Ishtachava, this is prostrating oneself while spreading one's arms and legs in total submission. This is the description about what we do. Modim, which could be translated as thanks, its root meaning is to acknowledge, recognize, bend the knee, prostrate, and recognize. So, of course, the rabbis are interested in a little more detail here. Rabbi Tanchum said that Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi said, in those blessings where one is required to bow or to bend the knee, one who prays must bow until all the vertebrae in the spine protrude. So imagine that, just bending over enough until the vertebrae in your spine begin to stick out. Establishing a different indicator to determine when one has bowed sufficiently, Ula said, you bow until you bend until you can see a small coin on the ground opposite one's heart. Just lean as if you were leaning over. Rabbi Hanuna said, you don't have to go that far. There's room here for leniency. All you have to do is move your head forward, and you don't have to go any further than that. Just move your head forward. And Rava said that applies only if one is exerting oneself when doing so, and one appears like one who is bowing. So you can see the gradations here of what it means, of what kriya means, of bending the knee, of bowing. Mishtachavim means going all the way down and extending one's arms and legs. So I'm just going to stop the share there for 1 second, because in a moment I'm going to invite you into an embodied practice. Some of you may have engaged in this on Rosh Hashanah and on Yom Kippur. There's also a tradition in some synagogues in communal prayer when the Aleinu, what it was called the Great Aleinu of the year, is recited by the prayer leader for the community to go all the way down on the ground. For me personally, it's a very, very powerful moment of physically embodying the idea of submission to a reality greater than oneself, of really a physical manifestation of yirah, of awe, of recognizing that there is something greater in the world than ourselves, to kind of break through the ego that we carry throughout our lives. So in a moment, I'll guide us through a little bit of that practice to do that. I just wanted to show you that passage from the Talmud to say that some of you may physically be able to and have the space and physical capacity to go bend your knee and prostrate yourself on the floor where you are, but it's not necessary to do so. It is sufficient simply to physically, whatever your capacity is for bending your knee, whatever your capacity is for lowering yourself by turning, that will be sufficient. So that's going to be our practice for today. We're going to do an embodied practice of the third step prayer, and Aleinu, all in one. But I want to offer one alternative before we do that, because for some people, they may be problematic for any number of reasons. So here's one other high holiday related alternative. Perhaps you hear the shofar of New York here. On the eve of Yom Kippur, Kol Nidre, there is a traditional piyut, a liturgical poem, which has this as the refrain: Kihine kachomer biyad hayotzer. Behold, we are like clay in the hand of the artisan. We are like raw material in the hand of the artisan, who lengthens and shortens it at will. Kain anachnu biyadcha. That's what it's like for us in your hand, God. We are like the raw material in your hand. Remember the unbreakable covenant. Chesed notzer. Create us with chesed, with compassion, with loving kindness. Look to the covenant and don't consider our self-destructive instinct, our yetzer hara, our baser instincts. Imbue us and treat us with compassion, with chesed, and help us release and let go of the inclination that is self-centered and self-destructive. To offer one image here of the clay in the hand of the potter. And of course, the poem itself uses all kinds of imageries of all different kinds of artisans working with glass and other raw material. And we are the raw material. So I wanted to offer that as an image for those of you who would prefer to sit with the image of being raw material, being shaped right now by an artisan. That's an option. That's an option that you can follow. So for our practice, we take a little chance here, and invite those of you who have space in where you are and are comfortable doing so to go find the space where you will be able to kneel on the ground, and even just to prostrate yourself completely, just to lay face down on the ground, to rest on the ground. That's what I'm going to do. And if you prefer to stay put where you are and to sit, that's totally fine. Your option will be, as I guide us, to lower your head, to bend your knee, to offer yourself and adopt a position of acknowledgement, of humility, of trust, of hope, of surrender, of recognition of something greater than ourselves. And if you prefer, you can sit with the image of being clay in the hand of the potter and allow yourself and your life and your will to be remade by God, or however you understand God, as a reality that is greater than yourself. So for those who are going to try the full Aleinu, the great Aleinu practice, I invite you to find space on the floor near yourself. I'll do the same. And we do this at these words, Vanachnu korim, we bend the knee. Bring awareness to your knee and the bend in your knees. It's a physical way of representing your willingness to make a decision to turn your will and your life over to the care of the reality that is infinitely greater than any one of us. Anachnu korim umishtachavim. That's the position of going all the way down on the ground, extending the hands and the feet, the fingers, resting the forehead on the floor, or if you're more comfortable, turning it to just rest your cheek against the ground. In this year of Shemitah, embracing this earth, releasing ourselves into this earth, surrendering, committing to love this planet from which we arise, to which we return. And you can stay in this position. Just let yourself rest. There's no work to do. Just allowing yourself to be supported, to be held, to be loved with chesed by the Yotzer, by the craftsperson who is always transforming us, always remaking us, always leading us, guiding us to be who we are meant to be in this world. So we'll sit with heads bowed, or sit as clay in the hand of the potter, or rest against this earth for the next 8 minutes or so. In our last few minutes of practice together, if you are lying prostrate on the ground, you can stay there. If you're sitting in your seat, whatever position your body is in right now, even for a few minutes, it is possible with our bodies to make a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of one who is beyond us, and to trust that we will be held and considered with chesed, with kindness, with love. That we can be led, we can be guided, we can be inspired by, we can be comforted by God as we understand God. And if resistance arises to that, if we feel fear or anxious, we can honor all those feelings too. Those are real. They are important. If it's comfortable for you to place your dominant hand over your heart, give it a little loving massage. Chesed notzer. Create us with chesed. We can each whisper to ourselves some variation on the prayer of the third step. Help me turn my life and my will over to your care. Help us turn our lives and our will over to your care. Help us be who you made us to be in this life, to be the best versions of ourselves in this world. And if you've been prostrate on the ground, I invite you to begin gently to move your body and come to an upright position, come back to your seat. Come back together, come to the group. If you've been sitting with your eyes closed, to gently open them. And with this excerpt from a poem by the Sufi master Rumi, Surrender. Rumi writes, "Very little grows on jagged rock. Be ground, be crumbled, be ground, be crumbled. So wildflowers will come up where you are. You have been stony for too many years. Try something different. Surrender." Come back together, friends. Thank you for joining in this practice, which I know may have been challenging, physically or otherwise. As we always seal our practice every day with an opportunity for those in mourning or observing a yard site to recite the mourner's Kaddish. So I invite you, if you're in that category, to add the name or names of those loved ones you're remembering today in the chat box. And in a moment, I invite you to join me in rising in body or in spirit for Kaddish. And just a note, we note to myself and to you, Adi, that we need to substitute the Days of Awe version of the Mourner's Kaddish, just to let you know, there's an extra le'ela in the third paragraph of the Kaddish during the days, these 10 days of awe, which I'll insert there right in the middle of the Kaddish. So for those of you who are reciting Kaddish, inviting you to join me in rising in body or in spirit. And for those who are not reciting Kaddish, to bear witness and be a loving, supportive presence for those who are. Yitgadal, Yitkadash, Shemei Rabba.
Amen.
Yamad, Yivrach, Yirutei, V'yamlich, Malchutei, V'chaye Chon, V'yamei Chon, V'chaye D'chol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agalav, V'zman Kariv, Amru, Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabba Mevarach, Lam Yamei Hamaya. Yitbach, Yishtabach, Yitpa'al, Yitramam, Yitnaseh, V'yithagar, V'yitaleh, V'yitzlach, Shmei B'kutzav, V'yichud. La'ela, ula'ela, Bikol birchata v'shirata, Ushbechata, Nechamata, Ba'amiran ba'alma, V'yamru, Amen.
Amen.
Yehi Shlama Rabba Ben Amaya, Chaim Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael, V'yamru, Amen.
Amen.
Oseh Shalom B'rucham, Hu Yaseh Shalom, Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael, V'al Kol Yoshvei Tevel, V'yamru, Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, friends, for joining us today. I want to thank Marla Kaufman and the Jewish Addiction Awareness Network for partnering with us on these quarterly recovery-oriented meditations, which we hope have been meaningful and helpful to many. If you know of anyone who you think would benefit from these, you can let them know, first of all, that they're all recorded and now on our IJS YouTube channel, which we hope you'll subscribe to, but you can find all the daily meditations, the yoga sessions there as well. So if you'd like to revisit this meditation, or if you know of somebody who you think would benefit, please let them know about that. Thanks to Adi Stein. Thank you, Morlif, so much for your support for this practice. Thanks for all of you who are joining us for the first time today. We hope you'll come back as often as you'd like, anytime Monday through Friday, except of course when there's a Jewish holiday or a secular holiday. We end officially here, but we offer an opportunity for those who'd like to stay on for the next 10-15 minutes. If you have any questions about the teaching or about the practice, happy to take those and try to do my best to respond to those. For those of you who are leaving, I want to wish you a Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shuvah Shalom. It's the Shabbat between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. For those of you who are fasting, wishing you a meaningful fast. For Yom Kippur, a meaningful day next week. And we'll be back on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and Friday next week. Of course, not on Thursday for Yom Kippur. We hope to see you then. So Shabbat Shalom. Have a sweet restorative Shabbat. And if you have any thoughts, questions, comments you'd like to share, you can put them in the chat box. And Adi, maybe you can let us know whether, see if we're having better luck with the chat demons today.
No chat demons today. Everything's going swimmingly.
All right, excellent. All right, so I'm going to keep an eye on the chat if there are questions. So the beautiful words at the end about wildflowers growing are not my words. Those are the words of Rumi. I'll share the screen. They're on the handout for today. This is just the end of a poem by Rumi called Surrender. Just pretty much says it all. Very little grows on jagged rock. Be ground, be crumbled, so wildflowers will come up where you are. You have been stony for too many years. Try something different. Surrender. It's a poem that really goes obviously really well with that Kihine Kachomer Piyut liturgical poem. And also, by the way, there's another wonderful poem by the great Israeli poet Yehuda Amichai. Very similar about how nothing can grow in ground that is too hard, that there needs to be broken up. Also a great recovery-oriented poem by Amichai about embracing our brokenness and seeing that as a vehicle and as an avenue for transformation. Okay, I'm just going to scroll up to see the questions. There's a question about whether there will be a mindfulness service for Yom Kippur B'nai Jeshurun, and the answer is no, unfortunately. But just a reminder for those who would like to make use that I was part of blessed to be part of a wonderful team at Congregation B'nai Jeshurun in New York City to do a mindfulness-based service on Rosh Hashanah that's on the B'nai Jeshurun YouTube channel, and also might be a helpful resource for you during the days of awe. A lot of the same themes came up there. If you have a question, if you just put it in caps, let's write question, that will help me. There we go. Okay, Deb Golden. I have tried for many years to trust in the surrender to that STGO. However, since my beliefs are more non-theistic, non-dualistic, I struggle with to whom or to what I am surrendering. Especially when I'm struggling, I end up feeling more alone. Well, that's a great question. Thank you so much, Deb. I mean, for me, again, I can only speak from my own experience. I think that the fact that 12-step recovery leaves up to the individual, however one would like to define the idea of something greater than oneself. It can be a non-theistic, non-dualistic way of understanding the divine. And so for me, and I'd probably say in the mystical tradition that we, in the neo-Hasidic tradition that we embrace and teach at the Institute for Jewish Spirituality, one way of understanding it is simply to recognize the mystery of life, recognize the unknowability, which is in some ways the deepest truth. And so the surrender, the turning over there can be understood as a way of recognizing and acknowledging and turning things over into the great mystery of life. That may or may not be stabilizing or satisfying in any given moment. But I would say that's how I think I understand it. There was a article I read this week about the function of wonder and awe, about how we are affected from the inside when we witness something awesome, wondrous, whether it's whatever it is, great natural wonder, the sky full of stars, or the ocean, or a great canyon, or the desert, or a forest, or even a small wonder of nature. And I think that's where I go. I try to tune into my body memory of what I have learned in moments like that, of, oh yes, I am just a small part of this much, much infinitely, unknowably bigger scheme of the cosmos. And there can be something strangely comforting about recognizing that, and at the same time feeling like I am an inextricable part of that. Okay, I hope that was helpful. Which Torah, Marla's asking, which Torah portion do you think speaks most directly to step 3? I don't have a great answer to that. I mean, I have an answer. I don't know if it's the one I probably would think of as the Torah portion that most directly, but the one that I was looking at in preparing for this was Parshat Bahar, which is the Torah portion that teaches about the Shemitah and the Jubilee year. So that's what's in my head. That the idea, this and I appreciate actually an opportunity to elaborate a little bit on this Shemitah principle, where for a year we are enjoined to allow the land to remain fallow, to leave the planet alone and undisturbed, to not interfere or engage or manipulate it for our benefit. And the purpose of doing so may be agriculturally that it's a good thing for the land to rest, but the purpose for us is to remember and to acknowledge that it's not ours, that we don't own it, that we don't ultimately possess it. We don't ultimately possess anything, that everything emerges out of something greater than us. So it is that the Shemitah practice is, I think, very much a third step practice. Thinking about, other stories that pop into my head is, the story of Jonah, which we'll read in the afternoon of Yom Kippur, is also a great step 3 story, where Jonah just tries to, he hears the message from God to go to Nineveh and prophesies to the people, which he resists and runs away from. Says, no, that's not my will. That may be your will, but I'm going to do my will and hop on this ship. And ultimately has to surrender and come back. And even at the end, is unwilling to accept the divine will that the people of Nineveh be forgiven, having done tshuva. He wants them to be punished. And that's his will. That's him. It's really quite, right on in terms of thinking about the third step. That's a guy who needs to, Jonah is a guy who really needs that third step big time. Yes, thank you, Ivan, for putting The Place Where We Are Right is that Amichai poem I was referring to. Flowers Will Never Grow. It's almost as if, it really makes me wonder if he knew that Rumi poem, where he says, the place where we are right is hard and trampled like a yard, but doubts and loves dig up the world like a mole, a plow, and a whisper will be heard where the ruined house once stood. Great recovery, a great recovery poem. Deb, thanks for translating your acronym there, which I couldn't quite make it out. Something greater than ourselves. I will write out B'nai Jeshurun. So it's Congregation B'nai Jeshurun in New York City. If you go, I put that in. So if you just go to their YouTube channel, you'll find the mindfulness service for Rosh Hashanah. Did Moses ultimately surrender to God's will? He was full of doubts of what God called him to do. That's really, there's so many. Once we're aware of this dynamic about the sense of having our own ratzon, the Hebrew word there is ratzon, our own will, which is part of being a human being. There's nothing wrong with having a will. The issue is whether we can align our own exclusively self-centered will with a will that is concerned with the whole, with the greater reality of which we are part. And I think so much of Jewish tradition is really about align. For many, the idea of the mitzvot is to take on the yoke and to renounce our will and accept God's will. That's not language I personally resonate with. I much prefer language that speaks to alignment of our will with God's will, because I don't think we necessarily need to disparage ourselves or renounce ourselves, but rather to honor ourselves in our wholeness, and at the same time hold on to the paradox of being an individual and being unique and being different from everyone else in this world, and having a common creator. I know that I never liked that piyut, the kihina kachomer, until more recently in my life. It always bothered me to think of ourselves as being just like passive, just raw material being created, giving ourselves over. But at the very least, it's a great corrective to the idea that we have to remake ourselves, that we have to control ourselves. And for the process of tshuva, transformation that we're engaging in this time, I think it's really a remarkable thing to have this awareness that if we just allow it to happen, we can be transformed. Everything is being transformed and remade moment to moment to moment. It doesn't mean we shouldn't participate in that process, but one of the ways in which we participate is by recognizing that that is happening and by trusting that process. For many of us, that's a difficult thing, for any number of reasons. The idea of trusting something other than ourselves may be close to impossible. And so for many of us, particularly people who are struggling with addiction, it may be almost impossible to do that because our life experience has taught us that it's unsafe to trust anything other than ourselves. So that's why recovery doesn't happen on an individual basis. It happens as part of a community where people can support each other and remind each other that it's okay to learn to trust the group, whatever. We begin to learn to trust. And I think the surrender process is very much about that. Okay, I think that we are at time. So again, I want to thank you all for being here, for joining in this. I hope it's been helpful. I know it is for me. I hope it's helpful for you if you are in synagogue or either physically in synagogue or a community or practicing at home virtually in some way to engage in that practice of prostration, of engaging in the Aleinu. And hope that you'll join us again next week on Monday when we return for practice. So Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Sweet and healthy new year, restorative and wonderful Shabbat for all. Shabbat Shuvah. And we hope to see you on Monday.